Hello, everyone. This is Eva Nolik-Smith with Yoga You Online, and I am very excited to be here today with Tom Myers, author of Anatomy Trains and founder of the Kinesis Myofascial Integration Bodywork Training Program with headquarters in Maine and offices worldwide. Tom is famous in bodywork circles, and I would say far beyond, for his work with charting the integrated structural connections of the body in his model of anatomy trains, the myofascial meridians that connect all parts of the body. He has been a student of the human body pretty much all his life. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. And he has studied with Ada Rolf, Moshe Feldenkrais, and Buckminster Fuller, among other luminaries. Tom himself is known as a visionary thinker who combines an encyclopedic knowledge of anatomy with an ability to discern and cast light on the fundamental wholeness of the body, which I would say is rare in anatomy experts. So Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I sound very good in your introduction. Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So you're known as one of the leading experts in how the new findings into the nature of fascia relate to the structural health of the body. But today we are here to talk about another topic that is one of your great passions, a topic that is somewhat obscurely phrased as kinesthetic dystonia or somatic amnesia. And I think I'll start the interview by quoting a guy called Tom Myers, who said, "Our body is our most proximate, intimate, and useful tool, and yet we graduate from school knowing more about the principal exports of Chile than we do about ourselves, our own selves south of the neck." Tom Myers. So tell us about that and what caused you to say that and how it relates to kinesthetic dystonia.
Well, you said, have you been into your body all your life? And I said I would have answered you silently only after I discovered it, because I was very carefully educated out of my body and out of my body feelings by the way that I was raised in school and by my parents, and not through malice and not through trauma or any kind of coercion, but just simply because my body wasn't used and there wasn't any, I was not good at sports, and if you're not good at sports, you're not going to get any body training, really. What do? A little bit of dancing, but dancing's being taken out of schools, a little bit of music, but music's being taken out of schools. There's not a lot of physicality. So I'm saying when I talk about kinesthetic dystonia, I realize it's a big long word, but we're talking about how people are losing touch with their kinesthetic sense because we just don't move as much as we used to, and we certainly don't move with attention and awareness. That's one of the things that I always like talking with you, because you're in the middle of yoga, and yoga is moving with discipline and with awareness. That's the whole point of doing these practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I could put this, I just want to put it in its positive realm, and its positive realm is KQ, Kinesthetic Intelligence. So there's a lot of kinesthetic intelligence around in the world too, but it's not really valued as much as intellectual intelligence or even emotional intelligence. We're beginning to understand about emotional intelligence. Certainly when I hire somebody for emotional intelligence, not their IQ, but their EQ. And so now I'm just saying, well, pretty soon we're going to have to start paying attention to KQ, because our kids are not being sufficiently moved, sufficiently educated in their movement to survive in today's world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But just to play devil's advocate, what's wrong with being stuck in our head? I mean, it has brought us modern civilization as we know it, with all the industrial progress and higher standards of living and tremendous technological advances.
Absolutely true. We have certainly gone for higher standards of living. And as we've moved from what we could call the paleo time, the hunter-gatherer time, into the agricultural era, we know from studying indigenous tribes that are still living a hunter-gatherer life. There are not very many left, but from those studies of those hunter-gatherer tribes when they were still around, that they move a great deal more than we do. They have to move. And when you think of most of the people in the farming communities, which started, what, about 10,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, spread around the world, you're still, when you're on the farm, you're throwing hay bales, you're swinging the scythe, you're even being on the tractor plowing the field is some movement. But nowadays, only 3% of the people are on the farms. 97% of the people are elsewhere. It takes 3% of the people to produce the food. So they're doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of work assisted by machines. And the rest of us aren't having to do a lot of work. And this is not, this may sound new, but it's not actually terribly new, because the first time that this comes up that I know about is about 500 AD in the middle of Rome. The poet Juvenal says, you've probably heard this phrase, mens sana in corpore sano, a healthy mind in a healthy body. And he's the first person to say that. And he was saying that because the children of the nobles, the aristocracy in Rome, was getting lazy and corpulent, and what he noticed was that they were also going mentally corpulent. They were going mentally not quick. So he coined this phrase, sound mind requires a sound body. So if this is really going into the internet age, you're going to have to make your living off your mind. We don't need bodies in the factories so much anymore. We don't need bodies on the farms anymore. We actually need bodies to produce art. I think that's going to be the biggest job of the 21st century, is producing art. But we'll see about that. But in any case, a lot of us have so little demand on our body that we go around to a place called the gym where we can actually move our bodies. Isn't that crazy that we have a life where we don't move our bodies regularly anyway? Again, one of the lovely things about yoga is roll out your mat on your bedroom floor and you've got plenty of room to get all the exercise that you need. You don't need to go to a gym and interact with a metal machine.
Right. Talk a little more about the general concept of kinesthetic intelligence, because you're talking about more than the importance of exercise per se. We're not just talking about your exercise and your body stays healthy. Your concept of kinesthetic intelligence goes beyond that?
I think so. It gets a little woo-woo when we say that you are what you tune into when you tune in. Well, we talk about it. It's a gut reaction. We actually do have feelings in our gut that are coming from our senses, but are processed by the more primitive parts of our brain. And so the messages we're getting from our gut, the messages we're getting from our inside the body that give us a feeling of fright or hunching down, those kinds of things are actually a form of intelligence. And we just don't develop kinesthetic intelligence very much. There are a lot of kids who are operating in small parks in New York who are making baskets with an incredible amount of physical intelligence, and they're not getting acknowledged for their physical intelligence. They really should be. And they should be teaching people like me who have kinesthetic dystonia, who have not enough kinesthetic intelligence, and we should be bringing the kids out who have brilliant kinesthetic intelligence and letting them teach the ones who don't. I have a pretty good ear, I'm good at teaching music because I can hear it, but I don't have that sense in my body. I really have to go to yoga class. I have to work on my sports. I have to work on my coordination. Right now I'm trying to learn to jump rope, Ava, and I'm not doing very well, I must say.
Never too late to change, Tom. Pick up a new skill.
No. Come on, we got to keep learning. We absolutely have to keep learning.
Absolutely, yes. So how is this concept of kinesthetic intelligence linked to interoception, which is one of the newer buzzwords? It is our ability to tune into the subtle sensations of the body.
Sure. You have three major senses through which you learn. We learn visually through the eyes. We learn auditorily through the ears. So if you go to a movie, or we were saying learning, so let's say you're watching an educational show on the internet. Anyway, you're learning visually and auditorily. The internet is a visual and auditory medium. It is not a kinesthetic medium. You don't you're just sitting there. You're not using your body. I have high hopes for virtual reality, because I think when we get really into virtual reality, you will be able to use your body fully in virtual reality, and that will be a way in which lots of people can have complex bodily experiences without actually having to go to the mountains or go to the sea or go somewhere, but to be able to virtually have that experience, but still have the full bodily experience. Right now, however, the internet isn't kinesthetic. Yoga is kinesthetic. Sports are kinesthetic. Sliding down the hill on your sled is kinesthetic. And when I say kinesthetic, I mean your brain reaches down not only out through your eyes and out through your ears and down to your nose and mouth, but down into your body, into both the muscles, bones, and joints, sort of your outer movement world, and into your inner organic world. And those are giving you messages all the time. And it was really an eye-opener for me to start to tune into those messages. I could feel a lot about a situation simply by seeing what my spidey sense inside my body was doing. It is a kind of spider sense, you know, just of feeling down inside yourself and saying, okay, how does this situation feel? And your intuitions are often very accurate. It's not a bad thing to have that intuitive hit coming up from your body in such a way that you pay attention to it. Let me put it in the negative, that if you don't pay attention to it, you sometimes walk into a situation that is your spidey sense should have told you shouldn't have walked into. So that is absolutely typically Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindles and lots of different kinds of stretch receptors in your organs, in your gut. And I know I'm making kind of outrageous claims here, saying that hunches and intuitions and things like that are coming from your inner body sense. But I really think that that will be proven out. But I want to say that's a little bit ahead of the game. If you're sitting in your scientific hat and you don't agree with what I'm saying, then we'll have to wait a little bit to get the real research to put that in. But certainly the people who have I notice in my practice that there are people who have more kinesthetic sense and less kinesthetic sense. And if you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to teach somebody and they don't have much kinesthetic sense, you're really having to look for imagery, you're having to look for the visual, how you're going to tell them about it, because you can't give the feeling and have them recreate that feeling. They're not good in the kinesthetic sense. And boy, go talk to some people on the autistic spectrum. It's really hard for most people on the autistic spectrum to get into their bodies and have a felt sense. It is, and yes, I can give you an answer to this, I think, having talked around it now for 2 minutes. The answer is orientation. That if you are in your kinesthetic sense, you're oriented in the world. You're oriented to gravity, you're oriented to the horizontal, you're oriented to the room that you're oriented to those people around you. And it's that sense of orientation that comes out of the kinesthetic sense. So kinesthetic dystonia is a lack of orientation, and kinesthetic intelligence bespeaks of a better orientation in the world.
Yeah, I think one of the things you notice as you start practicing yoga is you get more of a sense of the body, and you are able to translate those sensations of the body into, it's like the body starts talking to the mind. So you, for example, get better awareness of, when you're full, when you're hungry. That's one of the first thing many yoga practitioners experience, that their sense of how do you say it? Satiety gets.
Satiety, yes.
Yeah.
It's a hard word.
Gets developed better. And I think also there's more of a sense of, if you're not having an abstract feeling of not feeling well, you can more easily trace it back to what's going on in the body and what is causing that. And one of the other things that you said in one of the readings I did on what you've written on this topic is, you said that the current epidemic of unnecessary muscle tension, structural pain, and early degeneration due to misuse of our bodies also reflects our over-reliance on what can be seen and heard rather than what can be felt. And we're So you're saying we're strangers to our bodies and we pay a high price for this lack of movement.
Yes. So the high price that one might pay when one is in there is that your kinesthetic sense is going to give you warnings of impending problems inside your body. So the sooner that you can feel something that's inflamed or sore or not working or stuck, the sooner that you can get to work on it and get it out of there. And of course, these things are much more easily dealt with early on. If you can't feel yourself, something can sneak up on you in there and get very big before you have had a chance to feel it. I mean, that can happen anyway, but it's going to happen more if you're not paying attention to your sense of yourself inside.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and there's even sort of the guidance of what you can do to address it in terms of if you have an injury, what are the different ways to move in order to address that injury and address that tension in the body. I think that's a very common experience among yoga practitioners. But I would imagine also in body work that there is sort of a growing sense of developing this kinesthetic intelligence, both as you give body work and receive body work.
Yes, there definitely is, although I think that body work has a lot to learn from yoga and Pilates and body, you could still call it body work, but body disciplines that are more focused on movement. Massage therapists, you'll forgive me for this because I'm going to insult both groups. Body workers tend to ignore themselves and pay full attention to somebody else. And with this kind of thing of, oh, well, don't mind me. Yes, I'm a little not very kinesthetically intelligent myself, but I can help you do that, and we're going to pay attention to you, and I want to help heal you. And it's kind of this attention off the self. And I have to correct when people come in out of that kind of attitude into our trainings, we have to correct that. You need to be paying attention to yourself if you want to be a good practitioner. If you're not tuned in inside yourself and actively working on getting yourself balanced, then you're not going to make a really good practitioner, no matter how much you care about other people, because you won't be a good antenna yourself. If you're going to be working with people, you have to be a good antenna to the signals that are out there. And the more you're in your body, the more you make your body into an antenna. That's one of the things we're going to be talking about on the workshop, is how do you make yourself a clear antenna for the signals that are coming from you and from other people, including your students and clients. And if I were to be very general, I now have to insult the other side. If I were being very general about my experience with Pilates teachers, yoga, and the folks who came at this, personal trainers are included in there, who came at this from the movement, their first sense was to satisfy themselves. And it's only later, oh yes, I really like this, I'd like to be able to teach it. And you see this in the yoga teacher trainings as well, that the people who are doing yoga wonderfully, but are not necessarily able to teach it wonderfully, because you have to be able to get out of yourself and get into the experience of somebody else to be able to teach it. So to be a good practitioner, I think, in this era, requires this, on the one hand, some attention to oneself, so that you're not letting yourself go to pot or losing your own sense of your own insides, because you are the antenna that's going to figure out what's going on with other folks. And then also that you are able to get out of then having sort of gotten into yourself, that you're then able to get out of yourself and get into that other person when it's time to do that. Just because I see this all the time in personal training, just because you're wonderful at all the stuff that happens out on the gym floor doesn't mean that you're wonderful at conveying to somebody else all the wonderful stuff that happens out on the gym floor. It really is a different thing to experience it for yourself and to create that experience in somebody else. It's very easy to do that when you're creating the experience in somebody who's very similar to you. If you are a young woman and you're doing a yoga class and the only people in your class are young women, then you're going to have a certain kind of yoga class. But to be able to spread out, to work with old people, to work with not so able people, to work with children, to work with men, to work with difficult men, to work with difficult women, for that matter, all of those things are going to require expanding your ability to empathize with other people. And I think that process of empathy, my experience, I can't prove this, my experience of empathy is that it is a kinesthetic resonance with other people around. There may be other things involved in there, but if I don't have much, I don't see people who are not feeling in themselves having much true empathy with other people. I think you have to do.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I think you touch on one of the most difficult things about teaching yoga. I mean, we're familiar with emotional empathy, but I think you're right. There is also an element of kinesthetic empathy, and that involves noticing where people are at, and whether they are staying with you, whether you're going too fast, going too slow, talking too much, talking too little, and the impact you create really requires like a kinesthetic empathy to feel that, and that takes a long time to develop. And I think you're right, it's the biggest challenge for yoga teachers.
It takes a long time to really get good at, but it doesn't take that long to develop. If when you're in front of the class, you know, when you're not talking, when people are just doing the asana in front of you and you're being silent, just come down into your body and kind of imagine that you are an antenna going out into the class. Can you feel in your body the state of the class? That will really help you. It really helps me anyway. I tend to overtalk, as you can notice. So when I get in class, sure, there are visual cues. People start to get restless, or they're consulting their phones or something like that. But I can generally pick that up the earliest, way before they start looking at their phones or changing their positions. I can feel it if I am in touch with my kinesthetic sense. So it's a much better thing to be. It's an early warning system.
Yeah. And I think also one of the challenges that compounds it is that most of the students you teach have very poor body awareness. So you're both struggling with developing your own kinesthetic intelligence, but you also square one with yoga, or even square zero is you have to start creating a foundation of developing greater body awareness in your students. And I'm
sure, but you have to start somewhere and go, because I think a lot of us in the modern world have poor body awareness, but also would put out body awareness as an art. The art of going into your body. Yoga is fundamentally a dance. Yes, we've been doing dance for time immemorial, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Well before yoga started in the mists of prehistory, there was probably folk dance, I would imagine. And so that dance was how we inculcated people into movement. You would do the dances of your tribe, and that would make you a member and help you be a member of that tribe, and help you feel in the same way that other members of that tribe did. So when you're going into yoga, you're going into the art of the body. And my brother is a portrait painter, and he's been, let's see, how long has he been at it? 50 years. And he's still telling me things of, oh, well, I discovered this, and oh, well, I discovered that. It's the same with kinesthesia. It doesn't stop. You don't become aware of your body and then that's the end. There's always more awareness to be had in the body. And you know, when my brother looks at a face, he's painting portraits a lot these days. When he looks at a face, he sees 45 colors, and he puts that 45 colors into the face. I look at the face and I don't see 45 colors. But when I look at his portrait and then I look back at the face, then I see at least some of those colors, 10 of those colors, because his portrait helps my eye see the way he sees. So every time I go to Baron Baptiste's class, I'm going to see the body the way Baron sees into it. If I go to Freeman's class, I'm going to see the body the way Richard Freeman sees into it. If I go to Anna Forrest's class, I'm going to see the body the way Anna Forrest sees into it. And each one of those is going to help me. And I would say, of course, when you go to a body worker, you're going to, when somebody comes to me, they're going to see into their body the way I see into their body, or feel into their body the way I feel into their body. And that's all part of developing the kinesthetic. And it's great to try different teachers, try different practitioners, try different arts, try different practices, so that you get that wide variety.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to people who just wanted to maybe incorporate some simple things they could do in their everyday life?
Voice. Use your voice to, use your voice to find your body.
Interesting.
does take a little training, but you can do it with singing. The trouble is that singing goes out of your body like that, and when I'm talking about using your voice, I'm talking about using your body in. I'm making my diaphragm ring like the clapper of a bell, like a buzzer, and that buzzing helps me become aware of my body, and I've worked with my voice enough so I can throw it around to different parts of my body. But if you start down there at the diaphragm and just let it expand, your voice is a great way of improving your kinesthesia. But the second thing is to do unusual movements. By doing unusual movements, you subject yourself to new sensation, and it's usually by new sensation that we pick up these different bits out of our body.
Interesting, great.
So you do your yoga wrong every once in a while, then you find
right. Exactly. And pick up that skip jump rope.
Yeah, well, you do better than I do.
So you have a course coming up on Yoga U Online that we're very excited about, where you are going more into this topic of what kinesthetic intelligence is, why it's so important, and the various different ways it impacts our health. You want to tell us a little bit more about the course and what you'll be covering?
Well, covering what we said, but in more detail. We are in the midst of an inactivity crisis, and the inactivity crisis, of which yoga people are going in the other way, so I'm very glad, but the society as a whole is moving towards less and less movement. So we will be going through what are the advantages of being fully somatically informed. We'll be talking about how emotional things are when we go into somato-emotional or somatic amnesia, that we suppress emotions as well as feelings, as well as bodily feelings. We express the emotion, suppress the emotions that are going with them. That can have significant health effects down the road. And we're really the only animal that can forget themselves the way we do. And I'll be explaining how our brains work in such a way that we, unlike other animals, really can lose our kinesthetic sense.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
And then the positive side is the kinds of things you can do with what if your kid was really let's leave ourselves and think about our kids. What if we raised our kids to be intellectually intelligent and emotionally intelligent and physically intelligent? That is really quite rare, and we haven't had to think so much about the kinesthetic intelligence because life just provided you with all kinds of opportunities for movement. But there's lots of kids now, even kids in wealthy countries and in wealthy homes, who really have very little opportunity or very little necessity for movement, and therefore they don't move, therefore they don't feel, therefore they can't express complex feelings. Complex feelings are all grounded in your body: grief and anger and exultation and delight. These are all things that happen in your body. They don't happen exclusively in your mind.
Interesting. Yeah. Makes it sound like you get just like a bundled up kind of basically bundle of unprocessed emotions, because it can't flow through you if you don't have that connection.
Yep. And so things get stuck, and the more things get stuck, the more they get clogged. And there was a famous 16th century physician named Paracelsus, and Paracelsus said there is but one disease, and its name is congestion.
Interesting. Yeah.
So we get congested in our feeling, we get congested in our blood, we get congested in our lymph, we get congested in our fascia. It's we would do quite well to get rid of that one disease.
Yeah.
And being very aware of yourself is a way to do that. Right.
Yeah. The primary of which, of course, being movement, if we preach to the choir.
Yeah. I think we're preaching to the choir, but that's okay. They've got a bigger choir that they have to preach to.
All right, Tom, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And
hey, well, I'm looking forward to the course. Thanks for the opportunity, Eva, and I hope to see you there.